Hi guys, in this video I want to talk about sections. That is all of these icons that you see on the screen here. So each step in a process template, so you can see here this particular example template is 3 steps. Do the first thing, do the next thing, do the last thing, and then you're done. So under do the first thing, there is not yet any instructions, and so I want to show you the use case for all of these. So let's start off with some text. So we're going to enter some text here. So this text each time, so now I'm going to run a workflow on this so that you can see what this looks like as we're adding the sections. So you can see, enter some text here that will appear every single time that you run a workflow. Now I want to go back. I want to edit the template because I want to add another section. So underneath that, I'm going to add an image, and we will find some random image from my download folder. Don't even know what that is. Here's an image of one of the speakers at our summit. So perfect. There we go. There's an image of Marcel. So that's the next type of section. And these sections, by the way, you can move them up, you can move them down, you can drag them around, you can clone them, you can copy them. There's all sorts of things you can do with them. So we've got an image box and a text box. So now we go through, we can add a video. And as you can see here, you can paste. So I will grab the video of the URL of a random video. And you can see you can put YouTube, Vimeo, Loom, Screencast-O-Matic, and Wistia. Just paste the URL in there, click the add button, and you can paste the video in. As you may have noticed, now you can also replace the video. You could delete this section if you would like. You can add back a section and say you can actually upload the file directly into Flowster, whatever your desire is. In this case, we'll just stick with the YouTube video. So that is the video type section. So the next thing we're going to add is a file. So a file, you can again choose kind of any type of file that you would like. So we will look at, what do we got here? We'll just use this. So there's the file. It looks a little bit like an image because in this case I chose an image file, but you could put any type of file, could be a PDF, could be anything that you would like. So now let's go back into workflow mode so you can see this as we're building it out. So you can see here, it's different than a file is different than an image because it's saying, hey, you can download this. So the use case for this would be there's some type of something that the person running the workflow needs to download during their working their way through the workflow. That would be the use case for the file type of section. You can see there's the image. Now you can embed images into, there's our video, you can embed images into a text box, but I recommend that you strongly use the image icon for images because it gives you the ability to click on the image, expand the image, and if you wanted to, of course, easily save or download the image. Not exactly sure what your use case for that would be, but that's fine. So now let's go back into edit template, and I want to finish showing you the different types of sections. So we've got a checklist. So a checklist is actually a super useful type of section because let's say that in step 1, do the first thing, there are 2 things that you really want to make sure that someone does. So what you could do is, and this is just one use case for a checkbox. There's actually quite a number of use cases. But let's say we'll call this step 1. And then, actually, let's make it a bit more real. So let's say find keys, and then the next one is lock door. And we decide we don't want the first one. Now we can, of course, make this a required field or not. I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll make it a required field, and we'll say that all items must be checked. So what does that look like in workflow view? So let's go back to the workflow. So now in step 1, notice when I try and mark it complete, it says all items must be checked. So this is how you can ensure that if in a given step there is more than one thing to do, like in this case, it's find the keys and lock the door. Now, because I've completed all the mandatory steps for step 1, now I can put a tick in step one. So you can get really creative here in how you want to set up the logic to allow your employees or team members to work their way through a workflow. Now, there's a couple of other different types that I really want to make sure that we cover, so we're just going to keep on adding some more. So radio button is pretty obvious. Let's see, have a look at what radio button looks like. And radio button, again, you can use our conditional logic feature with radio buttons, but it's essentially you're having someone choose one of 2 options, one of 3 options, one of 4 options, and so forth, where with checkboxes, it's more of a reminder to do absolutely everything. And then we go back, and let's go and pick we're going to do a couple things. Well, we've got that one. Let's do a short text box, and then we'll do a long text box, and then we'll do an email. I'm going to put all 4 on here at one time, and then we're going to do a URL. So now let's go have a look. So these are the use case for this is as you are going through a workflow, you need people on your team to actually enter information into the workflow. So let's go back and give this a label so this is a little bit more intuitive for you. So we're going to call this contact name, and we'll make that one mandatory. And then we'll put contact bio. So let's say this was part of a podcast workflow. And then we'll put guest email. And we'll make that mandatory. And then we'll put guest website. Could be client website, could be whatever you would like, but hopefully this will give you the idea that I'm trying to convey. So now when you go into workflow mode, you're realizing, well, this particular workflow is specific to a specific episode for Richie Rich. And Richie Rich is a rich guy who blah, 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 blah. And then, you can enter his email, richie@rich.com and richierich.com. So these workflows really can be a valuable place. That's why we call them fully interactive checklists. Not only are you reading information, but you can enter information in them that other people on your team may need to reference in some other steps in the workflow. For example, if this was a podcast workflow, you would need all of this information because maybe on the blog post or in an email you sent to the guest or somebody else on the team who's responsible for some other step needs to access this information, and you don't want to send them off to some other application to go and find that information. All right, so we're almost done with sections. So we've just got a few that we haven't shown yet. One of them is file upload, and one of them is request date, and then the final one is dependent workflow. So dependent workflow will pop. So let's do this. Request file upload. So let's put upload client PDF, and then we'll put episode live date, and then we will, just for fun, we actually have a fully built workflow for publish new podcast episodes. So hopefully this will give you a good idea of the use cases for these last three sections. So now when we flip back to the workflow mode, you can see that if a client had provided us with a PDF file, we would go ahead and choose upload, and we would upload it there. And we would say, well, we think this episode's going to go live on the 14th. So now everybody knows who's working on their way through this workflow when this episode is likely to go live. And now we want to actually execute a related workflow and make it sort of attached to this workflow. So we can go ahead and say, well, we're just going to execute that related workflow. And there we go. So what's happened now is we can open up this podcast workflow in a new tab, and you can see that you'll see that this is a fully built out workflow. It's basically the use case for this last section is you're able to daisy chain together. You can see this is a very, very built out workflow. There's lots of steps in it. You can daisy chain together multiple workflows at the template level. So if you know that this process requires use of template number 1 and then template number 2, and then template number 3, you can use this this feature here, this section type, which, just to review, is the conditional workflow. You can use it to basically daisy chain them all together, and just so that's the dependent workflow function. So that is the sections explained. And as I mentioned in other videos, I want to remind you that while you can absolutely create all of your workflow templates, your SOP templates from scratch using what I've described in this video, I would strongly encourage to speed the process up, that anytime you're looking for a new workflow, that you make sure and that you check the Flowster marketplace, as we have hundreds of fully customizable templates in the marketplace. And then I would also make sure that you have the Chrome extension for Flowster installed. It is in beta at the time of this recording, but this will allow you to create fully custom workflows without nearly as much manual clicking as I just showed you in this workflow, and I'll cover exactly how that works in a subsequent video.